You ever lie in the dark, wondering if you're just wasting time, pretending to be okay? This whisper isn't for people who have it all figured out. It's for you if you're still trying to find your way. Quietly. Daniel is 24. He did everything right. The degree, the plans, the pressure. But now, he's back in his childhood room, scrolling job posts like they're lottery tickets. Some nights, he sleeps on the floor, not because he has to, but because it feels closer to the truth, closer to giving up. He whispers into his pillow, not even sure if it counts as prayer. God, if I'm not where I'm supposed to be, why did you let me end up here? But what if this place, this pause isn't punishment, but protection? What if the silence is mercy in disguise? I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Psalm 32:8 KJV. He didn't feel guided. He felt forgotten. But maybe guidance doesn't always feel like movement. Maybe sometimes it feels like stillness with God, just watching, waiting for you to stop running in circles so he can point. Daniel didn't know it yet, but something small would shift the next night, and that shift would echo for years. If your life feels like a locked screen, don't try to type in the password again. Just let the light dim and wait for his touch to wake it. You are not off course. You are not invisible. You are not behind. God, if I'm not where I thought I'd be, can you help me believe I'm still not too far? If this whisper found you when you needed it, you can subscribe. We'll keep showing up for the quiet ones. Because what Daniel says next in the most ordinary moment might be the start of everything turning. If you've ever whispered, I don't know what I'm doing, drop, still figuring it out in the comments. Your honesty might give someone else a reason to keep going. And if this whisper steadied your breath, wait for the next one. Because even the most lost roads can still lead home. Some people lose their way with a crash, others with a whisper. Daniel, he just faded, slowly. One morning his mom knocked just to ask if he was coming to breakfast. He said yes, but didn't move. That's how he'd been answering life lately. Yes, I'll try, I'll look. But inside, nothing moved. He told himself, maybe if I just stay still long enough, someone will drag me forward. But no one came. And he started to wonder if maybe he wasn't supposed to be moving at all. But when Daniel finally did move, it wasn't a leap. It was something smaller, something softer. Cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning. For in thee do I trust, cause me to know the way wherein I should walk. For I lift up my soul unto thee. Psalm 143:8 KJV. That verse didn't tell him to run. It told him to lift, to whisper trust, even if his hands were empty. Daniel realized he didn't have to find the whole way. He just had to ask to be shown one step. So he whispered something strange. Not a question, not a complaint, just 5 quiet words. Okay, God, I'm still here. Sometimes you don't need a full flashlight. You just need a flicker, a screen lighting up in a dark room, enough to show where your feet are. You are not stuck. You are not invisible. You are not broken. God, if I can't walk yet, teach me how to lift my soul. If this whisper sounded like something you've thought, you can subscribe. It means you're not as alone as you thought, because Daniel's still here. Wasn't the end. It was the doorway. And tomorrow, something starts knocking back. If you've ever said, I'm still here, even if I don't know what to do next, write still standing in the comments. And if this whisper helped you breathe softer, the next one might be where you finally hear the answer you thought would never come. When you don't know where to go, even getting out of bed feels like too much. But what if grace meets you exactly there? The next morning, Daniel did something he hadn't done in weeks. He opened the curtain, not to let the light in. He didn't care about sunlight. He just wanted proof the world was still out there. He stood there quietly thinking, if I take one step today, but it leads nowhere, what's the point? But what if it isn't about the step, but about what awakens in you when you choose to take it? The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Psalm 37:23 KJV. Daniel didn't feel good, didn't feel strong, but maybe being ordered doesn't mean being perfect. It just means being willing to move, even if your hands are shaking. So, he got dressed, not for an interview, not for a big plan, just for himself. Sometimes the first act of faith is not a job application or a breakthrough. It's putting on clean clothes, as if you still believe you matter. You can move, you can rise, you are still becoming. God, I don't need a full map, but could you help me take one step that doesn't feel fake? If this moment looked like yours, you can subscribe. The next whisper may be your next step, because what Daniel finds isn't success, but something deeper. A sentence that finds him first. If you've ever gotten dressed just to feel real again, write still moving in the comments. That counts as courage too. And if this whisper helped you rise, even just a little wait for the next one. Sometimes movement starts before clarity ever comes. What if the sentence you need most isn't shouted in a sermon, but whispered when you least expected? Daniel went outside, no plan, just walked to the corner store for a bottle of water. And while waiting in line, he heard the man behind him whisper to the cashier, some days just standing up is a miracle. Daniel froze. It wasn't meant for him, but it felt like it was. He stood there holding that bottle thinking, was that God? Did he just speak through someone else to tell me that even standing is sacred? Sometimes the sentence that changes you doesn't come from the Bible or a preacher, but from a tired stranger with the same ache as yours. He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds. Psalm 147, 3, KJV. Daniel wasn't better, but he felt seen. Maybe healing isn't always a straight line. Maybe it begins the moment you stop pretending you're unbroken. That sentence, the one whispered in line, it followed him home. It started rearranging things inside. And what came next wasn't something he expected to do at all. Sometimes God speaks in lowercase, not thunder, not visions, just a soft sentence in the grocery store line. And your soul hears it louder than anything else. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are not beyond repair. God, if that was you, speaking, say it again any way you want, just louder than my doubt. If this whisper met you somewhere real, you can subscribe so we don't lose each other in the noise. If you leave now, you might miss what Daniel does next, and it's the first time he lets someone back in. If a stranger ever said something that felt like God talking to you, type "still listening" in the comments. Someone else may need your echo. And if this whisper reminded you that healing can sound like ordinary words, wait for the next one. Because tomorrow, Daniel opens a door he thought would always stay closed. Healing doesn't always look like healing. Sometimes it looks like opening a door you've kept locked even from yourself. That night, Daniel did something he hadn't done in over 4 months. He texted a friend back, not for advice, not to explain where he's been. Just, "Hey, still here?" He didn't expect a reply, didn't need one. He just needed to show his heart that the door still existed. Part of him whispered, "What if they don't answer?" Another part whispered louder, "What if they do?" Because letting someone see the mess sometimes takes more faith than trying to clean it up first. Bear you one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2 KJV. Daniel never wanted to be a burden. But maybe that's the lie, that your pain makes you heavy. What if the truth is your honesty makes someone else lighter? What came next wasn't a flood of comfort, just 3 dots typing, then one sentence. Me too. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll do all day is send a text, not to be saved, but to remind someone they're not drowning alone. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are not alone. God, if honesty is heavy, give me the strength to carry it into the light anyway. If this whisper opens something in you, you can subscribe. Let's keep unlocking doors together. Because the next door Daniel opens isn't to someone else. It's to a place inside him he thought he buried. If you've ever sent a text just to say "I'm still here," write "still reaching" in the comments. And if this whisper helped you unlock something, wait until the next one. Because healing doesn't always feel like light. Sometimes it just feels like not hiding anymore. Sometimes the road back to yourself doesn't start with clarity. It starts with quiet and one person saying, "Me too." Daniel stared at the screen. 3 dots. Then that message, "Me too." It didn't answer anything, but it did something bigger. It made him exhale, and it reminded him someone else is in the fog too. He didn't reply right away. He just let those two words sit beside him like company in silence. There's something terrifying about being seen in your confusion, but there's something healing too. Daniel realized, maybe I don't need fixing. Maybe I need permission to be here messy and process human. Because what if the reason you feel lost isn't because you're failing, but because you're becoming someone new? Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? Isaiah 43:19. KJV. That verse isn't about arrival. It's about emergence. New things don't shout. They stir slowly beneath your doubt, your fear, your numbness. Daniel didn't feel new, but maybe that's exactly when it starts. That night, Daniel didn't scroll, didn't search. He just sat quiet still, and somewhere inside, something small whispered back, imagine your heart is soil, not barren, just wintered. What if God is planting something you can't yet name? You are still growing. You are still becoming. You are still loved. God, if you're doing a new thing in me, help me not to rush it or run from it. If this whisper felt like a pause you needed, you can subscribe. Some growth only happens when we're still long enough to notice. Because tomorrow, Daniel won't do anything big, but he will walk into a room he's been avoiding for months. And what's waiting inside will change everything. If you've ever needed permission to not have it all figured out, write "still becoming" in the comments. You might be the voice someone else was praying to hear. And if this whisper gave your soul a little more space, wait for the next one. Because healing doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it just looks like presence. Sometimes the scariest place to return to isn't a city or a job. It's a room where you lost a piece of yourself. The next morning, Daniel walked down the hall. There was a room he hadn't entered in months. His old creative space where he used to sketch, write, build small things. Now it was cluttered. Boxes, dust, the past, frozen in neglect. He turned the handle. The door creaked like it too hadn't breathed in a while. He stood in the doorway thinking, what if I never get that version of me back? The version that dreamed, that built, that believed. But healing doesn't always mean restoring who you were. Sometimes it means discovering who you're becoming. Though thy beginning was small, yet thy latter end should greatly increase. Job 8:7 KJV. Daniel didn't want to go back. He wanted to remember why he ever began. And maybe God doesn't resurrect our past. He resurrects what it meant. He didn't clean the room, didn't organize. He just sat on the floor, back against the wall, and whispered something only that room would understand. You don't have to fix the whole space. Sometimes healing means sitting among the dust and honoring the part of you that once believed in more. You are not forgotten. You are not failing. You are not finished. God, if there's still something in me worth reviving, meet me here even in this forgotten room. If this whisper felt like your story, you can subscribe. There's more inside you than you remember. Because Daniel finds something under a box, and it isn't just an old notebook. It's a memory he thought he lost forever. If you've ever stepped into a room that held the pieces of your old self, write still remembering in the comments. And if this whisper helped you sit beside your past with grace, wait for the next one. Because sometimes what feels like memory is really mercy in disguise. Some things you find in old rooms aren't objects. They're echoes of who you once dared to be. Daniel reached under a dusty box, and there it was a sketchbook, the corner folded, the spine half torn. Inside a pencil drawing of a window with light spilling through, and under it in his own messy handwriting, still hoping. He didn't remember drawing it, but he remembered feeling it. That page broke something in him, not in a painful way, in a merciful one, because maybe the hardest thing isn't being lost. It's realizing you once knew how to believe. Daniel didn't cry. He just held the book close as if he was holding the version of himself that once prayed with pictures instead of words. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Isaiah 43:18, 19a, KJV. That verse doesn't mean forget who you were. It means don't stay there. Don't build your future with the blueprint of your burnout. Daniel didn't want to go back. He just wanted to bring the belief forward. Do you have a room like that too? Not in your house, but in your heart. Daniel's wasn't made of walls. It was made of old hopes. And he was just now learning how to unlock it again. What if healing isn't a miracle moment? What if it's sitting with the sketchbook, the song draft, the notebook of dreams you closed too soon, and whispering, I still see you. You still carry light. You still carry purpose. You still carry hope. God, help me carry forward the pieces of me I once believed in. And if they've been buried, help me find them again. If this whisper touched something you forgot you loved, you can subscribe. Some memories come back not to haunt, but to heal. Because Daniel doesn't just find something in that sketchbook, he decides to try something. Not perfect, not public, just one act of quiet courage. If there's something in you you've buried too soon, write. Still remembering in the comments. Someone else may need to remember too. And if this whisper helped you trace the outline of your own hope, wait for the next one. Because sometimes you don't need to start over. You just need to start again. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums. like the sound of a pencil returning to paper. Daniel sharpened a pencil. His hands trembled, not from fear but from reverence, as if he was touching something sacred again. He didn't draw anything grand, just a single leaf. Simple, small, but honest. And when he finished, he wrote underneath, "Still here." He didn't know if this meant he was back. He didn't even know what back was anymore. But for the first time in a long time, he felt present. And presence, it turns out, can be more powerful than purpose. Because being where your feet are is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Psalm 34:18, KJV. Daniel didn't feel strong. He felt fragile. But maybe God isn't waiting for your strength, just your surrender. Because broken doesn't mean unusable. It means open. That one drawing didn't change everything, but it changed something inside him. And that something would make space for more. Think of your soul like a window. Sometimes all it needs is one streak of light to remind you that the sun never left. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are still becoming. God, I don't know what this step means, but thank you for giving me the courage to take it anyway. If this whisper helped you take even one breath softer, you can subscribe. You never know who you'll inspire by simply not giving up. Because Daniel's next step doesn't happen in a quiet room, but in a noisy place he used to avoid. If you've ever done something small just to feel human again, type "still present" in the comments. It might remind someone that showing up matters. And if this whisper gave your soul something steady to hold, wait for the next one. Because sometimes what you thought was starting over is really just coming home. Sometimes healing will ask you to leave the quiet and carry your softness into the noise. That afternoon, Daniel walked into a local coffee shop. He used to go there every week before everything fell apart. This time felt different. The clinking cups, the low hum of conversation, the laughter 2 tables over. It all felt too alive for the numbness he had lived in. Too bright for someone who had been in the dark too long. But he stayed. He ordered tea. Not because he wanted it, but because it was simple. Then he sat by the window, hands around the cup, like it was an anchor. Part of him whispered, "What am I doing here?" Another part whispered louder, trying again. Because trying doesn't always look brave. Sometimes it just looks like sitting in a place that once knew your joy and letting it see you again. Fear thou not, for I am with thee, be not dismayed, for I am thy God, I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Isaiah 41:10, KJV. Daniel didn't feel helped, but he felt held. There's a difference. Help can come later, but presence, that's what keeps you from walking out. Daniel didn't talk to anyone, didn't write, didn't read. He just sat. And for the first time, the noise didn't drown him. It reminded him that life hadn't stopped. only paused. If your soul is a string that may be sitting in the noise again, it's like plucking it gently just to hear if it still makes sound. You are not invisible. You are not out of place. You are not forgotten. God, if healing means learning how to sit in the world again, give me the stillness to stay, even when it feels loud. If this whisper made you feel less alone in a crowded place, you can subscribe. You're not the only one quietly healing, because something happens next. Not dramatic, not big, just a small smile from a stranger, and it rewires something inside Daniel. If you've ever returned to a place you left behind, write "still showing up" in the comments. It means more than you know. And if this whisper helped you sit with your discomfort, wait for the next one. Because sometimes just being seen is a step toward being healed. Sometimes all it takes is a stranger's smile to remind you that you still exist. Daniel sat by the window still holding his cup. It had gone lukewarm, but he hadn't noticed because for once he wasn't measuring time. He was just being. That's when it happened. Someone leaving the cafe looked at him, not in pity, not in concern, just smiled, like they saw him, and Daniel instinctively smiled back. It wasn't a moment worth retelling, but it was a moment that reminded, because sometimes we don't need rescue. We just need to feel real again, seen, named. Here, that smile didn't fix Daniel's story, but it rewrote something inside his silence. Thou art my servant. I have chosen thee, and not cast thee away. Isaiah 41:9. KJV. Daniel wasn't chosen for a mission, not for a role, just for being here, for not giving up, for sitting in a world that once felt too heavy and letting it see him. Maybe that's what being chosen looks like on a Thursday afternoon, with tea and a trembling breath. That smile stayed with him, not for what it meant, but for what it made possible. Because later that night, Daniel would send a message to someone he hadn't talked to in months. Sometimes, healing isn't about doing something grand. Sometimes it's noticing when someone looks at you with kindness and letting it mean something. You are seen. You are still here. You still matter. God, if someone ever forgets that they're worth noticing, make me the one who smiles first. If this whisper made you feel less invisible, you can subscribe, because sometimes the smallest echoes remind us we still have a voice, and that message Daniel sends, it won't just reconnect him, it will reopen something he didn't even know was still waiting. If a stranger ever made you feel seen without saying a word, write "still noticed" in the comments. You never know whose heart that smile landed on. And if this whisper reminded you that being seen is sometimes the healing, wait for the next one. Because the next word you send might come back as something more powerful than you expect. Sometimes the boldest sentence you can send is just, I miss you. That night, Daniel sat with his phone for 10 minutes. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because he wanted to say it honestly. And so he did. Just 7 words, I don't know where I am, but I miss you. He hit send, then turned the phone over, face down, heart open. Part of him wanted to apologize. Another part just wanted to reconnect. And another part was terrified not of rejection, but of being met with silence. Because silence hurts more when it follows your honesty. But the truth, you don't always send messages to get replies. Sometimes you send them to remind yourself you're still capable of reaching. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things, which thou knowest not. Jeremiah 33, 3 KJV. Daniel wasn't expecting something mighty. He just hoped for something true. And maybe that's the kind of thing God shows you first. The courage to reach before anything reaches back. The reply didn't come that night, but sleep did. And for the first time in months, Daniel didn't feel like a ghost haunting his own body. Sometimes, healing looks like hitting send on the words you swore you'd never say again. You still care. You still feel. You still connect. God, if this reaching means anything, meet me in it. Even if no one else does. If this whisper mirrored something brave in you, you can subscribe. Because courage isn't loud, it's usually silent, trembling and honest. And when the reply finally comes, it won't fix everything. But it will say exactly what Daniel forgot he needed to hear. If you've ever sent a message not knowing if it would be received, write still reaching out in the comments. Your honesty might unlock someone else's courage. And if this whisper helped you name the ache in your heart, wait for the next one. Because sometimes the reply you didn't expect becomes the anchor you didn't know you needed. Sometimes what you fear won't come back, comes softer than you ever imagined. Daniel woke up to a notification. Just one, but it felt louder than 100. The message read, I don't know where I am either, but I'm glad you reached out. He read it twice, not because he didn't understand, but because he needed to feel it settle inside him. He whispered to himself, so it wasn't too late. So I'm not the only one still wandering. And then the thought that scared him most, maybe I'm still worth answering, because sometimes being met with a me too is more healing than being met with a solution. I have loved thee with an everlasting love, therefore with loving kindness have I drawn thee. Jeremiah 31:3, KJV. Daniel didn't expect to feel loved from a message. But maybe love isn't always loud. Maybe it's simply knowing you're not too much for someone else's time. Not too late. Not too messy. Daniel didn't reply immediately. He just sat there, not with answers, but with relief. And in a few minutes, he would open that sketchbook again. Think of your heart like a mailbox. Sometimes the mail you feared was lost just took longer to arrive, but it still finds you when you need it most. You are worth replying to. You are not too far gone. You are still being drawn back to love. God, thank you for the moments that say I still see you without needing to shout it. If this whisper echoed something you've longed to hear, you can subscribe, because someone else might need that whisper too, and you might be the one who shares it, because Daniel's next drawing won't be for himself. It'll be for the one who replied, and it'll be the first time in months he draws with someone else in mind. According to a 2023 study from the American Psychological Association, receiving a simple message of emotional honesty can reduce feelings of isolation by up to 47%. Sometimes a me too is medicine. If someone ever replied when you least expected, or if you're still waiting for a reply, type "still worth reaching" in the comments. Don't just scroll past, say it out loud. Your words might be the message someone else was afraid to send. And if this whisper felt like the start of something gentle, wait for the next one. Because what Daniel draws next isn't about art. It's about hope made visible. Hope becomes real the moment you pass it on. Daniel opened his sketchbook again, but this time he wasn't drawing to process himself. He was drawing to say, "I hear you too." He sketched a tree half in shadow, half in sunlight. At the bottom he wrote, "Still becoming," and he sent it back. No explanation, no caption, just presence. He wasn't sure if it would matter, but maybe the point wasn't to matter. Maybe it was just to witness another soul still trying, because healing doesn't multiply by holding, it multiplies by giving. Comfort one another with these words. 1 Thessalonians 4:18 KJV. Daniel didn't preach, didn't counsel, didn't teach. He just offered something he made while healing. And maybe that's enough, because sometimes the quiet offerings carry the deepest truths. The reply he gets won't be about the drawing. It'll be about what the drawing allowed them to say back. Your journey doesn't have to be loud to light someone else's way. Sometimes what saved you can soften someone else's storm. You can be healing and helpful. You can be broken and still be someone's peace. God, use what I've made in silence to comfort someone else in theirs. If this whisper made you want to pass on even one breath of grace, you can subscribe. Your smallest act might become someone else's starting place. Because Daniel doesn't just draw once, he keeps going. And what starts as a message becomes something more enduring than he expected. If you've ever given something small that came from a quiet place of healing, write "still giving" in the comments. You might remind someone that their scars still shine. And if this whisper reminded you that your quiet is not useless, wait for the final one. Because sometimes the things we make while mending become the very light someone else needs to return. You don't have to know where you're going to know you're no longer stuck. It's been a few days. Daniel still doesn't have a plan. Still doesn't know if this new season has a name. But every morning now, he draws. Not for followers, not for meaning. Just because something inside him finally stopped hiding. The sketchbook isn't full, but it's no longer empty. And neither is he. He still has questions, still has days he wants to disappear. But now he also has proof that trying again didn't break him. It remade him. Because being lost doesn't mean you're failing. Sometimes it just means you're being rerouted, gently. He restoreth my soul, he leadeth me in the paths of righteousness, for his name's sake. Psalm 23, 3 KJV. Daniel never expected to get back. He just hoped to come home to something inside. And maybe this was it, the quiet, slow, unimpressive healing that only heaven applauds. Healing won't always shout, won't always make announcements. But if you listen, you might hear the whisper that keeps you going. Your soul is not broken, just bruised. And even bruises fade in light. Let that be your next drawing, even if it's invisible to others. You are still trying. You are still returning. You are still being restored. God, I don't need a full map. Just enough light to take one more honest step. If this whisper stayed with you, you can subscribe. Your soul deserves reminders that feel like rest. Because the next whisper won't be about drawing, but about deleting. And what happens when you let go of something you thought you'd always carry? If this journey felt familiar, if you've ever healed quietly without anyone noticing, write still becoming in the comments. Because your becoming is beautiful even in silence. And if this whisper gave your soul room to breathe, wait for the next one. Because healing isn't just what you feel. Sometimes it's what you finally stop hiding.